Once you solve the hostage problem, there's always time to carry out the full military plan that you have to cripple Hamas military capacity or to cripple Hezbollah in the north.
We begin tonight with the latest on the war in the Holy Land. Today, Israel and Hamas agreed to extend their ceasefire for 2 more days, as Hamas was set to release more of the 200-plus hostages still being held in Gaza. There are no details yet about the terms for the ceasefire's extension, but they will likely involve Hamas releasing more hostages in exchange for Israel freeing a larger number of Palestinian prisoners. For some insight into all this, we're joined now by Ido Aharoni, a former Israeli consul general in New York. Ambassador Aharoni, welcome back to the show. It's good to see you.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, before we talk about the hostages, I do want to get your reaction to this because there have been multiple Israeli-owned tankers off the coast of Yemen seized by attackers. This is linked to the war in Hamas. How concerned are commercial Israeli businesses who operate in the Middle East?
I think Israeli businesses who operate globally are quite concerned with the rising tide of anti-Semitism and anti-Zionism and anti-Israel sentiment. I think that we all have to be vigilant during these trying times. But it's a big concern because it raises the insurance premium, it adds security and safety expenses, and it just makes things more difficult. However, as we prevailed before, just to remind our viewers, Israel survived the 1945 Arab boycott, which was all-encompassing. The vast majority of the countries in the world did not do business with Israel until the late 1980s, early 1990s, including Japanese companies and even American companies. They were all implicitly complying with the Arab economic boycott of 1945 that started 3 years before we even became a state. So we've been through the Arab economic boycott, and we're going to overcome this problem as well.
Okay, I do want to go back to the hostages. There are many remaining that are still in custody of Hamas. This could lead up to nearly 3 weeks of ceasefire if we continue to see 10 released each day in turn for a ceasefire. Do you think that that is a possibility, that we could see that long of a ceasefire, almost 3 weeks?
Yes, absolutely. It is a scenario, and we have to remember that Hamas has the advantage. They have the leverage. They have the hostages. The hostages are not just Israeli. There are several nationalities represented in that group. And as you mentioned in your opening remarks, Americans as well. So this is their leverage. As long as they have the people, the hostages with them, they can negotiate from a position of power. And so this could be prolonged. And there's, an open public debate in Israel whether this should happen or not. But I can tell you that the Israelis and certainly leaders of other nations, including, for example, the government of Thailand, were very proactive in their demand to look at this crisis as hostages crisis first. And the reason is, once you solve the hostage problem, there's always time to carry out the full military plan that you have to cripple Hamas military capacity or to cripple Hezbollah in the north. Our viewers should remember that it took the United States a long time, over a year, to prepare the plans and to train the forces and to produce the ammunition that then was used in Iraq. So from September 2001 until early 2003 was over a year that the U.S. Army was preparing for the attack. And so, and I think that this could also be the case in Israel. So what you're seeing is perhaps the end of the first phase of the military operation. But no doubt in my mind, if there's anything that we, the Israelis, learned from 10/7, from October 7th, is that we cannot allow a jihadist, Islamist, deadly organization along our borders, not in the south and not in the north. And Israel will have to proactively take them out. It's going to take time, may even take years. But we must do that in order to survive, because we have 400,000 displaced persons in Israel, refugees, Israeli refugees, people that left their homes in the south, people that left their homes in the northern border. No one is talking about them. They will not come back home. They will not go back to their homes unless the Israeli government can 1,000% guarantee their safety. And we won't be able to guarantee that safety unless we take out Hamas and Hezbollah. Both of them must be taken out. And otherwise, we won't be able to live in Israel.
I'm almost out of time, but I do got to ask you this, because as we saw these images of families being reunited, these hostages, there were also prisoners being released, and many were being greeted by people holding Hamas flags, chanting pro-Hamas slogans, many of these young men. In the last 30 seconds, is there concern that these able-bodied men now give Hamas more room, more bodies to fight? 30 seconds.
Yes, absolutely. That's exactly what will happen, and that's exactly what happened in the past. But unfortunately, that's part of the sad reality of what happens when you deal with a deadly genocidal organization that doesn't really care about human lives.